faith, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, with motion like a golden mountain, flame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With a supreme science, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the three worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Whose merits most sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing. Subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. Page 15, the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagawan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those five aggregates so as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. They completely pass beyond error. They reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Page 25. Vosashi Purki Juakshin Metok Tramari Ravling Chi Nidagan Party Sange Shingdu Meteoa Yijokun Namdak Shingla Chupashuk Jetsun Lama Tampakenam Kicho Kukala Kense Chinchine Jita Sampe Duche Cinema Lazab Yechuki Chapapatu So Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kandiryatayami Chadan Sogi Chanam La Jangchu Badu Dane Jazonje Dagi Chijin Jive Sonam Rola Benje Sanje Dobara Sho Sanje Chudan Soji Shonam Odo Dane Jazonje Dagi Chijin Jive Sonam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dobara Sanje Chudan Soji Shonam Chanchu Badu Dane Jazonje Dagi Chujin Jive Sonam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dobara Sho Kange de Senye Save Dawa de Jebama Yi Tembe Shine de Zeve Godan de la Chazela Tonyi Nye Sande Jobela Chiche Sense Kanche de Kan Chana Vengan de Jesola Soa de Soshin de Lundo Sho Bandin Zeve Lama Ramboche Dage Jivore Meme Ne Jane Ode Jime Kone Jesande Kuzondo Jemudo Zende Sos Right, that good long come this us.
So we'll do a motivation meditation. Now rejoice.
다 기승한서 란랭에게 참마도심. 다 신랭에게 참말라니 참말라니로 어디 계시다. 란랭에게 참마스나 갈라고 하시대. 거기에 니 세자다니디 세자디 참마신라 뜨면 그런 카두 셰투야게 셰투니기 참마델라 란랭에게 참마시. 다 신랭에게 참마스나 그 세자다니 탈둑디로 세자 탈둑디 아니 사마라니 또 맞아가지 사마신다지라 뛰고 지라 내가 아니 신랭에게 사마서 어디라고 요랬어.
So today we're talking about prime cognizers whose ascertainment is under its own power, and prime cognizers whose ascertainment is induced by another. So what does this mean? Well, a prime cognizer whose ascertainment is self-induced is one that can perceive directly the object who ascertains its object under its own power, or you could say directly ascertains its object. Now, prime cognizer whose ascertainment is determined by another means that it needs another valid cognizer to ascertain its final object. So in this way, this is the basic difference between the two.
답변은 이제 배샤나디 신랭에게 참마사디. 근데 배제나라 직직디 카부로 차르면서 알아서 초왕거나라 요레스디 뭐 요레스.
So when we talk about prime cognizers whose ascertainment is induced by another, the explanation in the text is a little bit difficult to comprehend. However, we have these in our own experience, and if we look at those, it might make it easier to come to terms with.
배나 지난 신시 가르쳐서 이제 신랭에게 참마스라 세자들라 니샤로와 세자들라 내가 그 세자당 다 참마 코란랑 그러다 내가 그 세자당 타두기 세자 니샤로와.
Okay. So when you look at this prime cognizer whose ascertainment is induced by another, it has its temporary object and its final object. So this is the two ways to look at it. Yeah, current object and final object, you could say.
배나 내가 그 세자를 배나 가서 리지 배 매말함람람람 통고도 마우시 통고다 레 매말라지 마우시 통고다 그렇지. 데 내가 그 세자를 가도 하고다 다피 마우디 매 가도 임바 태어나 매 가도 임바체 당아 더과서 걸어 메이나 로이나 모델로이나 메이나 텐점사 걸어 다비 다디 태어나 매 가도 모델로 마우 말렘는 모델로 라이트 유로 헤드라이트 로나시 유로
headlight. Okay. Headlight.
헤드라이나 and 모델 메글로이나 텐점사 다 다우체라 그래서 다디라 제 당라다디 다디 메가도에 마시면라 아니 코란 파파파파파 도나 비티르 디 모델로 말데 메가도레 신스로 제가 아니 치즈 메가도에 치신고다 아니 디 메가도에 임바디 시제다니 타둑드레고
okay
마보디 내갑체
So if, for example, to explain the difference between this temporary object and the final object, if, for example, you set a red hue in the distance, so that red hue or that red color is the temporary object of engagement. However, at that point, there's potentially some doubt to kind of go, well, is that red coming from fire? Is it coming from something else? Like, is it a car headlight or, light of some other source? There's this doubt that's present, could be present there. However, when you actually get closer to the fire, if it's fire, when you get closer and you actually see the final object, like you see the fire, then you go, okay, that comes from the fire. So that red color being the color of the fire is the final object. So the red itself, the red hue, is the initial object, or the temporary object, and the final object is the red color of fire.
당저 대 망고 쉬워라 원하시는 건 안저 초에는 변나 탭디로 와 탭디 탭디 내 하도 하고 그다음에 시기로 탭라 나란랭이 탭딜라 시제 내갑체 다 탭디 미다고 말해랍디 다 딜람산 신기면도 아 다디 미다고 이나 면은 다질 디 미다고래 줌쟁 가래라나 다 제발에 미다고 디들네 네 제발 참마시기도 제바스마딜라 때네 다디 미다고래서 하고도다 탭디 미다고래서 어디나지 다딘데 가서 망고요랑 알아서 유문에서나 처외나나 참마디 빼 망고요래서
Right. So for us, we have this a lot in our own experience. So for example, if you take this book, for example. So the book itself is the temporary object of apprehension. So we can know that. We know this is a book. But, for example, if we think, is this book impermanent? Is it impermanent or not impermanent? There may be some doubt there. So then we go through the reasoning and we go, okay, no, this book is impermanent because of it being a product, and we know everything that's produced is necessarily impermanent. Then this gives rise to an inferential prime cognizer, recognizing the book to be impermanent. So based on that prime cognizer, that inferential prime cognizer, that's how we reach the final object, which is the impermanence of the book.
아니 수수 님도 님도 망보시 다 뭐네 미디 야고도 슬렌데 어다 딘데 망보도 와다
So also, for example, when we maybe first meet somebody, of course we know they're a person, right? Like that's relatively obvious, but we're not sure, are they a good person or not a good person, how they are as a person. And even if somebody were to say to us, they're a good person, it doesn't necessarily mean that we kind of initially accept that. But after talking to somebody for a while, and getting to know them, then we can maybe come to the conclusion, they are a good person, right? So this would be another example, them being a good person being the final object. So there's many examples like that in our life.
다 당부디 빼디디래다 전라 메카도 인신스 메카도 이미 텐존사두기 갸는 말은 버진 엉봉우 숨실라다 다디 당기 빼셔야 전라고 메카도를 이나 메카도 이나 면은 텐존사 아니 대내가 말은 버진 엉봉우 숨디 다 말은 벌라 란랭이 참말에 말은 메카도 인다 면라 신랭이 참말에 어디 신고다.
Okay, so when we talk about this prime cognizer ascertained by another, although it's a valid cognition, according to its final object, at this point it's not a valid cognition. So, for example, we have this in the book on the bottom of page 27. It starts, it's quite long here. It's also prime cognizer which induces ascertainment by itself with respect to the reddish color in the distance, which is in fact the color of fire, but with respect to which there is doubt, wondering is it the color of fire or not. So what this means is that it's a valid cognition to that reddish color. It apprehends that correctly, but whether it's the color of fire or not, to that there's doubt. So to that, the color of fire or not, it's not a valid cognition or a prime cognizer towards that.
Is it
clear? Does that make sense? That's good. Is everybody clear on that? Like that it's what it's a valid cognizer to and what it's not a valid, what it's a prime cognizer to and what it's not a prime cognizer to? Yeah.
That nibadi karelas na. Chirang lang isin, chabar shin lang yawa sadrida. Nibatirwa, yawa nibadi. De tsinshing jidan chira sarwa. Tönla shawa yinba chero, ngela bejana shijalap shana. Shabalai de kasana shingi chidajiri, shingi shawa. De jagadang pöla yore shingdirwa, shing kabu to yore. Tönla shingi yinba che. Ane tönla shawa yinba che. Ta shawa yina mena tenzom saduji, ane yanga loda zimbe ombungu sums chedan, jirang lang yesidu, shingdi rwa. Jirang lang yesin, jidi ngewa shing susu nge sare. Taina chawa shinla nge gosde, de shawa yina shingi cheda, shawa shingda reshaas, yanga loda temba shing reshaas, shing zimbe ombungu sum rwa go, shingdu do zara, shing hago zara. Shingdi taina ya cheda shawa yina, shukpa yina, karina, hamago dinyo jorwa. Odere ta. Penyi wadi. Tangi wadi dwa.
Oh, okay. Sorry, the example's the same, but I used the one that was further down in the book. So it's actually midway through page 27, where it says, first, for example, since direct procedure apprehending the distance a reddish color, which is in fact the color of fire, with respect to which there's doubt, wondering is it fire or not. So that's the first example. The second one is, for example, this is regarding this universals and particulars, or the superset and the subset that we discussed a bit previously. The second, for example, a sense direct perceiver apprehending a tree having leaves and branches, which is in fact an Ashoka tree, and with respect to which there is doubt, wondering is it an Ashoka tree or not. So this example in the text here, of course, these trees are much more common in India. I don't even know if we have them in New Zealand, but they're much more common over there. But it's valid for any sort of tree. The inertial thing is you see a tree in the distance and you recognize that it's a tree, so it apprehends that. But there's doubt as to what kind of tree it is, like whether it's an Ashoka tree or not. And then, so it doesn't correctly apprehend that. So it's not a prime cognizer towards that. So this is like an second example of you apprehend the generality, but not the particular of that. Or you apprehend the universal aspect, but not the particular subdivision of that.
탭디 가리 탭이 나와 탭디 노트북이나 reading book이나 가리나 뭐 이제 어디다 그러지래다.
So for example, again, if you use the example of a book and you see a book, and it's a book, but you don't know what kind of book. Is it like a textbook? Is it a notebook? What kind of book it is, you might not initially apprehend.
미지 하고도 당고 미디 하고랑 미지 통인데 되다 미디 밸런스 하고라 미디 뉴질랜드나 오스트레일리아나 아메리카나 저머니나 그래나 하고도 어디 디즈 찍거래 제다디 지디랑 셴브라 미디 미인바디 셰라 다 제다디 미디 개가 그래 미인바디 다 신기요 말아 어디다 디 단데디 찍버지기하는데.
So also it's the same for people, we might see a person, obviously we know they're a person, but whether they're from like New Zealand or Australia or something like that we have doubt towards, we have to kind of ask them before we can clearly know that kind of thing.
Ini 계제시에요, 계제시에요. 아니 액션 도구면도 European Korean accent 직도 아니 자가도 자가라 accent 직도 개미도 인지 아니 페바이나 페베 인지 accent 직도 이게 단단히 맨다도 다 저한테도 아니나 다 됐어도 그러이나 다그 스타마다 자와라.
So for example, if we didn't actually ask them but we listened to them talk, obviously people have different accents. Now, but it's possible that say somebody from Tibet can have an English accent or an American accent, or somebody from India has an English accent. So it's not a definitive thing, but it does get us a bit closer to having some idea of where they might be from.
근데 알아서 뒤에 서외날 어딘데 망고에 가서 니고 딱 칼라사그라 사니말 칼라스 미망고 레기다 근데 미바다 하고라 미디 제가 가리 미바다 하고문다 어디래다
So like we all have this experience on Sundays. We get all bunch of people turning up from all over the world. And we know they're all human beings. Well, we hope they're all human beings anyway. But we don't know where they're from, like which countries they're all from. So we kind of can have that in a direct experience.
Some people maybe 1 year after, I know which country, some 1 year after, which country didn't understand, the logic to the day.
So sometimes the doubt sticks around for a whole year.
Oh, that is a
So is that clear?
That is somebody. Yeah, chirang chawnya. Now ni jang shileng ji chama song study ji ko ngobo thonga me thonyam be tenzom themba chi ngunju ongwe dabe slawda. Nge ngobo thonyo na me na tenzom ro tenzom thenje ji ngunju ongwe de sharwa ta de cheda ni sumbe ji de da shileng chama mare da de. So then the next one, the third, for example, is a sense direct perceiver apprehending blue, which is doubting whether the consciousness that thinks is, did I see blue or not? Did Samare? Samare, Shilling Samamare. Samadari Shilling Samamare. Did somebody Shilling never Samamare? Mare. So that's not a sense direct perceiver apprehended by another. So it's not a direct division. Because you see this hue and you sort of, or you're seeing this blue, but you're not sure. We're thinking whether it's blue or not. So it's doubt. Oh, sorry, it's the cause for doubt. Did some So it's like it's doubt and the memory which becomes the cause for actual doubt. Memory okay. Sorry, it's not memory. The word sounds very similar. Okay. Okay, so it's like the power to produce this doubt, something like that. So you could say literally it would be effectively the cause for producing this doubt, this mind of doubt. Yeah. So the third, for example, is a direct perceiver apprehending blue, which induces. So I guess induces here would be the word that's similar to cause. A doubting consciousness that thinks, did I see blue? So it's, okay, I understand. So it's a sense direct perceiver that induces the doubt, right? 도도 주제와 도도 계제 말와 세상고 참마 차고 무슨 참마 말이야. 그래서 참말라디 도도 매우선이 들어와. 네 도도 수 계송아 제단도 참마 차고 말. 참마게 도도 매우서 텐도 매우서라. 참마게 텐도 매우서라. 네 텐도 수 계송아 제단 참마 말해서 신령의 참마 말해서 참마 말해서 somebody 참마 말해서.
Okay, so this third one is Okay, so this third one's not a prime cognizer because the prime cognizer clears away doubt, like it gets rid of the doubt. So in this sense, this is not a prime cognizer induced by apprehension of another. Sorry, whose power is produced by, whose apprehension is produced by another. Or ascertainment here in the book is induced by another. It's not that because it's not a valid cognition. So therefore, it's not a direct division of this.
당분이 돼 sensi 숨샤베 난가 당분이 돼 참망을 실행에 참망을 치마데 따바레 라도.
And it goes on to explain this in the next paragraph. So there is a difference between prime cognizers when ascertainment is induced by another as to whether they are actual or imputed. For the first and second are actual prime cognizers where ascertainment is induced by another, whereas the later one, a prime cognizer when ascertainment of even the mere appearance is induced by another, is an imputed one. So this means the third one is not actually a prime cognizer.
다디 디 워드는 말로 다디 닝저 디지 시나 야고 단다 당보 신시 당보 되어서 되나 메카도이 메카도이메 텐존 사두기 다신랭이 참아져라 어딜 잡아대시 디틱스 시나 야고요 당보와 당보디 되나서 메카도 인신스로 다디 말로신 디라 메카도이메 텐존 사두기 ඥා는 뭐 말은 뭐 란랭이 제로 말은 뭐 짐바델라 란랭이 제다 디다 딜라 말amba 딜라 란랭이 세마레 란랭이 레스타 다 딘데 카도디 메 카도 임발라 신랭이 세마레다 딘데게 메 카도 이메라 신랭이 세마레 이나 딜라 아니 신랭이 세마레 딜라 신랭이 세마닌가 인자스 인자 딜라 다메 카도 이바딜라 다 세마 마레스 초 딜라 신랭이 세마레 이나 딜라 세마 마레스 다디데스 토부다 지로신 디
So it goes on to explain this in more detail in the next paragraph, so I'll just read it. Although from amongst those, the first, a prime cognizer with ascertainment of appearance is induced by itself, but the truth is induced by another, is both that which induces ascertainment by itself and also a prime cognizer which induces ascertainment by itself with respect to the reddish color in the distance, which is in fact the color of fire, but which, with respect to which there is doubt, wondering is it fire or not. It is also both when ascertainment is induced by another, a prime cognizer, when ascertainment is induced by another with respect to such as a reddish color being the color of fire. However, it is not a prime cognizer with respect to that reddish color being the color of fire. So it's kind of complicated in there, but when you think about it, it's like when it is a prime cognizer, so it's a killer. It is a prime cognizer, but not a prime cognizer for that would be the literal translation. But so it's a prime cognizer with regard to the reddish color, but it's not a prime cognizer to whether or not that reddish color is the color of fire. So it's not prime cognizer to the color of fire, but it is a prime cognizer to the reddish color. So, is that clear? Yeah. Right, so there it goes on about it a bit more, but if you've got it now, we'll stop here because if we talk more, you'll probably get more confused. So if you understand it, we'll take the win and move on. So it goes on to then go, the first, a valid cognizer, when a valid prime cognizer are terminologically divided, that's important. In another way, there are three.
Yeah,
so valid cognizers that are persons, valid cognizers that are speech, and valid cognizers that are consciousness. So the first one, a valid cognizer that is a person, for example, is the teacher Buddha.
간산 좀 된데 간산으로 간산. 간산데 이니 tema 인다면 있어야 돼. 나데. 나 tema 임에다 그래서 나.
Speech.
와 나데. 나 tema 임에다 그래서 나데 tema 이나 간산 tema 임도 부여래서.
So when we look at this example of valid cognizer as a person, what is it that defines whether or not a person is a valid cognizer? It's whether their speech is a valid cognizer. It's whether their speech is a valid cognizer. If what determines whether a person is a valid cognizer or not is when their speech is a valid cognizer. Remember, this is terminological divisions, so that's important. You remember that from anyway? Geshe will explain it.
Tadi chizang nga tsema sayade dinshi chunggo shadwa dila rwa kyu niwa di dimbashi tembe chunggo di chomdende ji nga rwa dila chizang chomdende ki nga di tsema yinzang ane chomdende tsema chares ya.
So to understand this, we go to the second example, which is a valid cognizer, that is speech, which, for example, is the wheel of doctrine of the Four Noble Truths, or the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. So because that was the Buddha's speech, and that speech was considered a valid cognizer, then the Buddha is considered to be a person that is a valid cognizer.
그래서 디 가르쳐네 dinshi 중고 dinshi 동부 점대데 dinshi 송바데 참마 간데 차라서 아 참마 가르쳐서 데 밀루 바레스 밀루 가르스나 덴바실라다 코알라 코레림발라 주군정다 대부도 되니샤라 코디 통고에네 좀딘데 송만나시 고에네제를 하는 학과도 가는 사제기 풍부디 동해 그런 시를 송 레도 와다 가는서 코와데나라 디 동해 풍부디 여친제라 기버지면도 어찌 대스 차리보이나 야 진지가 맞이버서 야 대스 기보이나 진지가 맞이버서 되기도 하디 좀딘데 송바데 땅문에 레도가 세 디다 참마 데레다 된문에 레도가 좀딘데 송만나시 다가란 레도가 성도 이지기기도 하다.
So, why is it said to be a valid cognizer? Because it's unmistaken. So, for example, what the Buddha taught, the Four Noble Truths, this is unmistaken because it talks about the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, and so forth. So, going into that, it talks about these contaminated aggregates and the nature of suffering, which means as long as you possess these contaminated aggregates, then you experience suffering. So, this is valid, right? And so because this is valid, then we can trust it, we can believe it, and that's why it's said to be a valid cognizer.
다드네 제단디 베나 좀된데 람덴 숨발데네 고된 토고여서 말하죠. 어두스레 다베나 동해데와 먼저 동해 단당하란저 동해다 강에 타면 되고데 수수여래와. 군조 수여래 수수여래. 수치가 소녀여 말은 가란저 수수게 삼로단단 노바단 레가치단 노발라 데네 동해도 중어래다. 데레메셔지가 수지가 소녀여 말했다. 데 삼로 데 짜와디 야야야 두두 먼저 삼로단단 마시바질라 데네. 레가 카시다 레가 마시바 온리 아니 딜라데네 되자시다 콘도 망고치 딜라데네 삼마지우디 온디 다 녀모디 군중사데 다 녀모디니 메우스야 유다 메다 녀모가 짜와디 무디 마리바사데 콜로록시리 록시 인자 코 유데 아니 짐바나시 튀는 메버레 다 데스위신 그래서나 동문이도 별로디게 도게 아니 마리바데다 게메바소도 요레 라비데 동해의 주 군중디 매우서야도 동해의 주디 매우서야도 스르와 중에도 매우서야 그 탐람들 남데다 아니 동해의 주단 제베 제와들라 꼭된세 어두스체네다 코올레 도베 탑들라 아니 람데다 꼭된세 용단데다 탐람디 리버스.
So, then looking at the true path and the true cessation, it goes on to, well, first of all, you say, well, where does the suffering come from? Who makes it? Is it made by a god? Is it created somewhere else? No, we create the suffering. Through mistaken behavior, mistaken thinking and behavior, that's what generates our suffering. So, and the root of this suffering is this ignorance, this not knowing. And this ignorance and not knowing leads to anger and attachment. So this ignorance can be said to be a wrong consciousness. So this is said to be the cause of all our suffering. So then how do we go about removing this? Well, this is through this path, true path, and this leads to this true liberation. So this is said also, this can be seen as unmistaken or true.
어디 제단다디 좀 된데게 숨만하지 되네면서 좀 된데 가디 만원들 라고로 왔죠. 미디 야고요래 미디 루고 말해 그 계절 당부시 그래 계절 시험나지 되는 그래서 이제 지그러 데리다 디시고 데.
So that's why we say this Buddha's truth is speech is reliable, because if somebody's very honest, always tells the truth, then we can know, we can believe, and we can trust in what they say. So this is how we say something's
세상 좀 가디 ngadi geje thangmashena ani iji mew chadoda tadi tembaro.
So it's also true if somebody isn't honest who lies, then we won't believe them. We can't trust what they say. So this is valid or true, to see that is valid.
Lende miluvare lagda chumdende leg dewi miluvare karasna le susu sambaya woche le gyawachena telatembe dewa digi yongres susu sambang yambache milo gogo ta thangmoma she jagzi she ne dende tunjung she jinde chena ani teladene susu semla thokba namdo majiwe yongdo ko tembare da odidi lende miluwa sa de danta kabdi chama shada de 단대 갑디기 답 갑디기 체매 코든데 밀루와 인단 체마레 딜라고 체마 먼저 뒤에서도 밀루와 리버서 디 말에 단대 갑디 디나기 수지 밀루와서 가르 밀루와서나 레데 밀루와레 라고도 레기 야고체나 디게 용거요 독자체나 동에 용거요 어디 아니 좀 된데 숙만하신 되는 내대로인자 레데 밀루와레 라고도 디레다
So like when Buddha also talked about cause and effect, this was incontrovertible, unmistakable or incontrovertible. And how was it? Well, the cause of happiness is always like virtue. Virtue is always the cause of happiness. Non-virtue is always the cause for suffering. So this can be said to be incontrovertible, right? If you produce non-virtue, you will experience suffering in the future. If you produce virtue, you will experience happiness in the future. So this can be said to be valid and also incontrovertible.
di ngonzo samlu tang ngone samlu tang di ngranzo mezena la pendo chimbo yorwa among ngonzo jomdende la yiji chigo yorwa kalchene jomdende lobjon che jomdende chu sungba ngone rem taje cheyonde ani shindu jomdende la yiji lego yorwa ni ngonzo da de la yiji chena ani da loke ni tangone jomdende gyaptugudo sa ani shindu jomdende ngonzo gyabyu jinduye da de
So, this is actually useful in our human life, in our daily life. Because if we develop trust in this, if we really look at the Dharma and study it, or the Buddha's words and study it and check, is it valid? And when we just find that it is trustworthy, it's valid, then we start, of course, by inference, have trust in the Buddha. When you have trust in the Buddha, that's when you can have, and his words, that's when you really start to be able to take refuge, to see the Buddha and the words of the Buddha as valid objects of refuge. And this refuge is what determines whether or not you're a Buddhist or not. So it's very valid to have this kind of understanding.
Tomba yiji chigi fashion, tomba yuna menam tobosa granzo. Tomba jomdende shajutuba de chung yuna menam. Yuna menam, one tomba jomdende chungure, lujuna la yore mare, one yore chungure mare. Hashi yiji chigmarwa. Tango jomdende chunga de hakura, yiji chura. Tadine sanjesini de yoa de ta hagur. Data lamsan hagu togumodo I kaguredo jomdende. 다 좀된데 숭샤버데 디 수송물에로 가서 단다 취치해도 수송물에로 단당한저 듀럴업전 지야데 디 수송물에 디 듀럴디 수송물에 다딘 달라마게 티자 윤진 푸조 잠바자서 송어가 그런 푸진 푸조 잠바자서 다딘 달라마게 윤진이 티자로 그런 게 송물어 제가 다 그런 게 송벨럽죠 띵아저 생아저래 편도 전부도 아직 다디 가진 전부에 상마저 다 디네 야야지도 디다니 지 공부로도 단 파보통메다 아니 도저 아니 디야 수송을 해서는 좀 되게 송부를 다 담아데 디게 상마 숭이디 싸워러디 좀 되게 샤슬람디 아니 신도 지 여바지게 하고 아니 디 송부들의 이제제래야 아니 디네 거딘팅 거딘팅나 아니 대바지게 대바 이제랑 대바리로 대발레나 아니 수심나라 아연데 야 공도 필요로 근데 내가 전부 쉬어제 그 상무 되더라도 거라게 상무 되다 다나 야고요라
So what determines whether your refuge is good or not is this level of trust or belief you have in the objects of refuge. So first thing is, well, first we have to really feel, did the Buddha actually exist or not, right? Did he come, did he appear, did he exist as like in this world? And then when we understand a bit more, we need to sort of see what was the definition, who was this Buddha, what was the definition of that, and look at what his speech was. What did he say? You know, when you read these words, or who said these words? And, you know, and also for other examples, like when we're studying this, we look at, well, who's the author of this text? In this case, it's Pujin Jampa Gyatso, who was the teacher of the 13th Dalai Lama. So first of all, we can say, well, he wrote this text and how valid it is, but also we can say, well, his incredible kindness to write this text, how much kindness he showed. And then when you go back, well, what was this based on, this text? We can say it's based on the words of like scholars like Nagarjuna and Asanga, and going back, you can trace it back to the Buddha. So therefore, it's all about what, you know, it all goes back to what the Buddha originally taught. So first of all, we have to establish that the Buddha exists. Then we have to develop trust in what the Buddha taught. And when you have also this trust, not only the trust, but also seeing the incredible kindness of what was taught, then you can develop belief, real trust and belief in the Buddha and these other teachers. And when you have this kind of trust or belief, then your positive qualities will develop up and up and up. So this is an example, right? Oh, okay, sorry. I said... okay. And once you have this belief, then this belief then later leads on to this faith, right? So trust, sorry, when you have this trust, that trust later leads on to this faith.
대화면은 다 가고 싶어지래.
카레디차.
대화.
연탱기.
대화요나 연대 탐지에다 연구를.
So if you have this faith, then you can say this is like the root for all these qualities, right? If you have this faith, then your positive qualities will develop up and up and up. So that's what's said to be the root. Yeah, so it's pretty important, really.
Tike jo mo shore de yo na simna la ka de na gawa su simna la ka de na ji yo tin simna la ga la ni mo de yo na ani stress da depression da anxiety da chang si yo mar da.
And when you have this kind of faith, also your mind will always be joyful. And when you have this joyful kind of relaxed mind, then things like stress, anxiety and all of that, they don't have any chance to arise. So there's no path for them to follow.
Similar 대화가 바와드 레스나나 아니 지기 강에 때 지금도 커원나는 데 풍부디 동해그란 시선서 동해 강에 때때 연구로 와. 이 동해디게 심나나 주 뇌두고 말아. 심나나 대화디 열어 봐. 대화디 심들라 word of 열어 가지고 다 대화디 왜 나시.
오케이.
아니 왜들라 짐바다 나고도 내갑가나 가두고 말아 봐. 아니 디 자월에 다 데돌 삼로 곰 양자 삼로 땅고래서 그래서 디게 zamada camro tombalен sanjo janjaro jaran samma camro tombalен chenjosa camro yago yona ane nangba chagre ane tomba shinda ge ten gore ane tombala yije de le dore ne so shiwe na da ngeson la de jegmare 좀 된데 격ure jamyeji yo tam yije de yorwa 아니 신나 제가 와다 시라면도 안 감다 지고야 시고 면도 받고 그러봐 그래서 어디다
건데디 냠가디
camro야 보여나 아니 수수 시도에나 녜손을 제가 말아 봐 녜손을 맞이 나나 아니 또 신나다 감다 지고야 면도 와 지금 먼저 수수 먼저 메제데 내가 논주 망보 제여와 좀 여러봐 먼저 코바디나라 동해 용거리 좀 용거리 가되이나 먼저 야고치도고 말와 아니 셈나라다 디딩마서 아니 셈나라 톡바 남도 레디 아니 셈데 마마마마마 팁도 짬도게 tomba 점된데라 이지 대바디 숙점보 요나 아니 셈디 야베 까고다 셈나 뉴발링을 야고 있으리로 당원에 힐링 데르다 저런서 힐링 고고이나 힐링원에 데르다 사운드 힐링 자 힐링 지도 말다 견서 아요야
So like these days in society people have a lot of stress and anxiety and so forth, and but they don't really have faith or belief in anything really, and they sort of think, oh well, just doing a bit of meditation will get rid of it all. But it doesn't really work like this, especially on a deeper level. You need this gradual development of this faith and this devotion and stuff. And if you have this, then also it's very powerful as an antidote to our suffering. Because, of course, in this life, when we have these contaminated aggregates, this is the nature of suffering, we're going to face difficulties and things like that. But they don't... if we have this faith, they won't overwhelm us, right? They won't overwhelm us because this faith acts like this kind of light and means that our difficulties, our sufferings won't overwhelm us. And, and it helps to develop. If we meditate, then this as a basis allows us to develop and increase our meditation. So, if I guess everybody here has taken these, done this refuge and taken these commitment, refuge vows and so forth. But the real refuge is this kind of determination, whether a Buddhist or not, is this trust. Depends on this level of trust and faith and belief in the objects of refuge. And when you really have this, then it's in the lower realms. And this alleviates this fear that we might have, right? If you really have this refuge. Because, of course, we make mistakes in our life, right? We can't always do everything correctly and perfectly, right? And if these kind of mistakes can lead to a lot of doubt and confusion, right? But if you really have this refuge and this faith and this trust, it gives your mind incredible power, and then this is very healing for the mind. This is like the real healing. So, and this other kind of healing, like sound healing and so forth, I don't know how much that works, but this refuge is like the real healing.
Yeah. 다디네 디지충고 디니메치 다 숨바딩 무슨 tema 제바 테마스 다 테망군에 데려와 다 테마 기부 테마다 가 테마디니 테마 친이 테마 말아 제바 테마디다 테마 친이 테마 데려와 제가 데주릭라고 해야 돼 데리다.
So now moving on to the next paragraph when it says, with respect to the enumerations being defined, prime cognizers are divided into two, direct and inferential prime cognizers. So these are the real division, are a real division of prime cognizers or valid cognizers. These other three, like valid cognizers, a person is a terminological division. It doesn't actually fit the definition of being a valid cognizer.
그다음에 이나 콜라 참말라고 해야 돼. 김생 가래라나. 밀루바레스 라고도 돼. 다그라운디고 루구 말레스.
Incontrovertible. So they can be said to be they're said as a valid cognition because they are incontrovertible. So that aspect of the definition of valid cognition is fulfilled.
그래서 네 당보 그래서 니리기 저에나라 삼노다나야고 여러. 먼저 미 깨져 당보신이 먼저 이질리기도 알아. 미지 깨져 가두이나 그 논리치고이나 내 야고치고이나 당보시에나 먼저 미들레 이지치기도 알아. 제가 그 마디다 다다 디그레 이지치기도. 데리다 좀 된데 송버데 nga데 당보문에 문에 주시에는 시 되는 얘기 요인자 아니 맞아. 이 당하는서 처음은 나래 제가 깨져 가리나 당보시에 되다 누가 첨부 쉬어지래도 하잖아 봐. 다양 당보시에서도 미상물을 벌벌벌라고 해요 못다와 딜람나야 가시기 BBC인데 람나 빼사래 BBC를 람나 상물을 벌벌벌벌 람다고라 BBC를 비요 말이야 랍서스 기겐다 아니 수수 이지치제 미드들라 아니 계절라고 그러면서 상물 랍되나 아니 요 말이야 되네 요 녀그라 튀어받은 데서 요 거죠.
So this unmistakable or incontrovertible is what leads to being unmistakable and incontrovertible leads to this trust. So if a person, if their speech is incontrovertible or honest and unmistaken, that's how we come to trust in the person's words, right? And so, of course, the words of the Buddha are said to be, are incontrovertible, and that's how we come to trust them. And if we have this in our trust these words and bring this into our daily life, it gives us a lot of power, and these words have a lot of power. However, not all people's speech is like this, right? A lot of people are just blah, 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 and it's not really like, whether you can trust them or not. But the words of your teacher and so forth, that is something you can really put your trust in. However, you can't do that for everybody's speech.
예, 미카시엘라 계절 정보 셰베 있네요. 이제 표주 로바 단계도 또 계절 소소 내가 논리로 셰는 미상만 안 논리디 셰라나 이 용어 말아 봐셔다. 그 셰고사 셰모고사 디 셴고래. 디 계절 딜라 셰나 펜도도 딜라 셰나 펜도 민도 디 셰니 셰고래 메제. 난 정보에서 정말로 블라블라블라 셰는 디 nenga.
So it's not just about being honest, right? It's about also being skillful with the speech, right? Like if you're always honestly pointing out everybody else's faults, then maybe that's not that valid, right? But it's knowing, also being honest, but also knowing, saying this is beneficial, saying that is beneficial, and then being like not only straightforward.
샤기 기겐데라 계절 정부 상마 셰오래. 이네 미 상마라 계절 상마 셰고야 요 말했어. 랍자딘데 요래.
So the advice is that when you're speaking with your teacher, you need to be 100% straightforward. When you're talking with everybody else, you don't have to overshare every little bit of information.
안서 디 누가다 ngana 소에나라. ngana 수수 야고인베 준지 계절 정부 셰나 디 논르싱으래. 미디 계제 셰 고사데 먹어서 셰올 미디랑에 계제 셰나 아니 펜도 도나 셰로 펜도 메베셰제 아니 엑스트라 프로블럼 소녀지도나 계제 셰기요 말들 카가샤 order.
So just thinking, I'm very honest, I always tell the truth, makes you a good person, or makes you something really positive. It's not always the way to think. It's also got to be like, well, if I say this to this person, is it going to be beneficial? Or is it just going to create more problems? If it's going to create more problems, then it's not necessary to say.
저런 계제디 미 또 저런 계제디 미 때보면 같은 데랑 안 누디 체슬라나 아니 디가나 숨세 시세 가세 아니 베데다 근데 속으로 미가 제 녀로서 할 거우다. 미가 제 내가 거우다.
Okay, so
so
some people like to kind of stir up trouble, they might point out this fault or point out the faults of others and kind of make this, likes to stir up trouble, likes to make problems here, there, and I don't know, maybe they drama, like a lot of drama queens or something, like a lot of drama. So this is not necessarily that skillful.
Shut manner, Kuno motivation yagoyela sheramena pentogo mar negoji.
So we need to share up this discriminating wisdom. If we don't have that, like if we have that and use our honest speech with that, then it's beneficial. If we don't use it with this discriminating wisdom, it just can create more problems.
So
this is why genuine love and affection is very important.
That didn't decay more. Don't but someone to done the gola did condense to much summer check though. The Tamu Jum Dende, summer country check though, this summer mango done. Also Jum Dende, Yiji, that was late who do not pay away. This summer mango tapshita, and the Susu Tangje, and a summer tang.
So this is very important. Like this, what makes in this explanation, what makes a teacher a valid cognition, a valid cognizer. To understand that and what is valid to put your trust into. And, if you really understand this, then you will really know what to put proper trust in will lead to developing trust in valid objects.
So
the advice of the Buddha was don't look at the person, look at the Dharma. Right? So it means like don't look at the person and just try and see how awesome they are. Look at what they say, is what they talk about valid or not?
먼저 딩산 간산다고요. 간산이 명칭보이나 이지지고로. 간산이 셰베 최대 편토모도 다고요 말다. 간산 명칭보이나 아니 다 딕사를 참아 딕사를. 간산의 명면은 이지지고 말데. 다 강해 상마 되고 먼저.
So, these days we look at the name. If the person's very famous, has cool titles after their name, then we immediately believe trust in everything they say. And if we don't really check, and if they don't have this name, then we're not really interested in checking whether what they say is valid or not.
간사마다 출랐다. 그거 책게제 셔야게 출게 책디 따다래 말데. 다 책디 자당 책당 되니는 책라다 좀 된다다고 그러더라.
So, you shouldn't focus on the person, you should focus on their words. And are their words valid? Are they Dharma? But it's not even just the words. We need to look at what the meaning of those words are and understand that.
항상 야구이면 주도요 말 코로나 야구이는 코로나 야구면은 코로나라는 게 레죠 그러면 되어시다 응원하시는 요 말아 딩 나는저 로가 딩에 비즈니스 말을 하거든 이난 언제 장고 비즈니스 레자라 아니 건 용도서 거래.
So you got to focus on the meaning of their words and whether that's beneficial or not, thinking they're a good person or they're good or they're bad, or looking at their positive quality or their faults. Well, how we see them has a lot to do with the karmic connection we have with this person, right? So, and it's not really our business if they're good or bad or not, but sort of we tend to want to make it our business, and this causes a lot of problems.
근데는 좀 된데 랍지다다 잡도 알아. 나는 좀 된데 이제는 내 도그라다. 와. 대도나 아니 좀 된데 랍서데 리그라. 좀 된데 랍지 잡신 요데 도나 아니 지메 좀 된데 립서데 건서 리그래다. 와. 전제 좀 된데 데 삼로 데다네 아니 야 야게 도라. So, we
really have belief in the Buddha and his words, and we follow this advice that he gave. That's how we actually can eventually reach the state of Buddhahood. So if we want to reach the state of Buddhahood, we've got to follow along that path in order to attain that result or that state.
좀 된대요. 오늘 그런 식으로 좀 된대 그린 가서 취해야 되다. 취고 삼다에 중물에서 좀 된대 매나 수승 그래. 통마승이 매봐. 다 알아봐다.
So, this shows the Buddha's incredible kindness to us because of what he taught. And, if he hadn't have taught this Dharma, then who would we rely on? Who would have taught it?
다들 칼라사, 셰탄, 찬뚱, 아니, 창사자, 부기, 아니, 되면서 제야 말이다. 강바자, 모터스. 단단하서 좀 된데 가지고 딜을 하거지 제야 알아. 되면은 아니, 단단하서 도
otherwise, we can do other things like we can drink beer, have a lot of children, build houses, drive cars, etc. Right? But of all this kind of stuff, all the kind of things we can earn. Sorry, it's just directly what Geshe said. The kindness of the Buddha exceeds all of this other stuff.
먼저 셈날 강관인 조자여라. 만델라 딘데 꿈야여라.
And we tend to create these things in our mind. Like we build these beautiful houses in our mind and live in them for a while in our mind, right? Like we kind of make our own little mandalas, I guess.
왜 피울렌스야도 코로나게 심타는 용거로. 수 심타도에는 영연들라 매도 망고. 신잠 전도 용거로. 피울렌스야 되래다. 와 미치기 셈 장마차도 디 고유되게 장마치 용거로.
But eventually, like the Pure Lambs are created like this, right? From the mind of the incredibly pure mind of one being, all these flowers and this beautiful things arise from the mind of one pure being.
디 되어요다네. 너 사자로 미 와렌스 망고였어도 메도시다 제요.
And we can see in a place where there's a lot of aggression and violence, and there's not a lot of flowers. It's not a very beautiful environment.
Maybe there are lost ghosts.
Lots of ghosts. New Zealand's not looking too good. Any questions?
No question. Yeah.
Is it like maybe
Oh, I don't have the Tibetan. Substantial entity would be.
On Monday night, we're talking about same substantial entity and all that. And now it's saying perceiving is the same substantial entity as the inferential cognition.
Direct perceiving. I'm assuming it's Zeno, but I'd have to see the Tibetan to be 100%. But like translating the words directly, so talk. What was the question around it?
Well, is that the situation of universal and particular, meaning they're the same substantial entity, and is that the situation of the direct perceiver being the universal or generality, and the inferential cognition being the.
Oh, I see. Okay, so with respect to the differences in substantial entity of direct perceiver and inferential cognizer, is the direct perceiver a universal and the inferential cognizer a particular of that?
And that's the reason they're one entity.
And that's the reason. Is that the reason why they're one entity? Yeah. So there, Jebaks this jela di notum semetan jefod semen noa chig zay noa chig. Pechenang la labra. Yeah, dini gunzen karere di notum sema di chire and Jebaks sema chirakre and dilateni di noa chigre or chimbure. So notum sema tan jefod semeni chi chirak yimbat yin di tu dire. No, they're not. They're not. One's not a universal and one's not a particular of that. Konso gaware ro.
Mare dire, di mare. Dire, gymzen. Musum jeva sama jujina. Jeva sama nyamsunyara rijoro. Jeva sama nyamsunyara rijoro.
Right.
Oh, dida jeva sama.
Nyamsunyara ro.
Mare. Tango musum marada. Musum dang jeva sama zejigre lara.
Yeah,
musum dang jeva sama. Wow. Ye musum dang jeva sama. Musum sama marada. Musum.
Oh, gonda. Not some time. Jeva gra. Sama marada.
Musum dang. Jedan de kare shawresna. Jeva nyamsunyowe ranrik jiorwa. Oh, de shaw.
Jepak nyamsunyowe ranrik.
De shado ade. Kyo nyamsunyowe ranrik musumdan zejik. Kyodan zejik yungo wata. Kyo nyamsunyowe ranrik yungo zejik dudu zejik. Yungo we.
Is one with
Slabda. Musumshi kyo nyamsunyowe ranrik musumdan zejik yungo wata. Kyo mobu khangash.
Being one substantially with the self-knowing direct.
Oh, dusre.
Oh, okay. With the self-knowing direct perceiver experiencing inferential cognition. No, it's not because they're universal particulars. The reason why they're one substance is stated here, and I made a mistake. It's not a direct prime cognizer. It's just direct perceiver and inferential cognizer, right? So they're not necessarily prime. But the reason is, it says here, the direct perceiver is one substantial entity with an inferential cognizer because of being one substantial entity with a self-knowing direct perceiver experiencing an inferential cognizer. So, these self-knowers, these rangrag we talked about? Right.
Oh, did it?
So there's a direct perceiver which is self-knowing and inferential cognizer. So
that they do standard on the deal la java sama nyamsnya rala de ranrik de java sama korang ki serik chajora serik chaji o de nyoa jora o de ta kuni zejik chadora
the serik
nyoa jora serik nyoa jora
oh okay
serik nyoa de ta ranrik de ra de kuni jigwa chadora zejik chadora da
so it's said to be a self-knower because it's said to be one substance because the self-knower is experiencing the clearer knowing aspect of the inferential cognizer. So that's
one substance
okay, Zaychik. Sorry, it's one substance. But if it's one substance, it's necessarily one entity, but not the other way around. But it is one substance here.
So is that clear, that reason?
So basically, the self-knower knowing the clear and knowing aspect of the mind is pretty much got the same perception as the direct perceiver. So that's what
same perception as the direct perceiver.
Because it knows the direct perceiver directly.
No, it knows the inferential cognizer. It doesn't know it's the direct. It knows the inferential cognizer. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but you said it knows the self-knower knows the clear and knowing aspect
of the inferential cognizer, right? So what?
The question is, it knows the clear and knowing aspect, and that's the similarity. That is the substance. That is the one.
So the clear and knowing aspect is. So it said that the direct self-knowing direct perceiver experiences the clearing knowing aspect of the inferential cognizer. So is this clearing knowing aspect why they're of one substance? So that is the substance. So dis they chig, dis they karere. Kan se di rangrek di jepa ki salrek nyongere ro. So dis salrek di dis they chig.
Jeva ke serik di dan jeva ke nyams nyuwa rarik sidu ko dokja dokje ro ma she shewa yawa che tuwa yo mare. Pa khaga su tuwa yo mare. Ngo jik chade la, ze jik chade. Pa yawa che tuwa yo mare. Ma tse yo na 제가 그런 게 녀외 차디면서 지게 제가 세리기 차디 녀기로 와 다가나 레면서 지게 바다 마마마제나 니에요 말고 제직 제 다가나면서 그래서
Okay, so it's said to be one substance because essentially they're indifferentiable. But this self-knower experiencing the inferential cognizer and the inferential cognizer itself can't really be separated. Like if you break it down further, you can't find it indifferentiable. You won't be able to separate them. So this is why they're said to be one substance.
Oh, that is so.
Okay, so we'll stop here before my brain explodes.
사지 묘지 중심에 도담 뢰라 린시 닌데 gem바리 산제 신제 미데와 조그 남다싱 라추파쇼 제츠 라메 쿠체 라텐신 남카춘 레초추게 바단 로상텐페 조메 사승기 조웨 무사 탁투네 규지 이다말 구루 란나만달라 간히야타야미. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddhas stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma, Tsongkhapa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified, and all the conducive circumstances be complete. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who, Saviour of the Snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion, to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjanath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Saviour of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. By relying on the 2 accumulations of myself and others in the 3 times, may the teachings of the conqueror Losang Dragpa blaze for a long time.